Here I'm going to show you a really cool feature in Excel, filtering data as you type. So it works like this, 1, and the data is automatically filtered. Let's view product 2 or product 3. We don't have to hit enter, we don't have to do anything else. Our data is automatically updated as we type. It's really, really cool. And I'm going to show you two different ways to do it. This one uses a special little feature, and we have a more rudimentary implementation of it, which doesn't work as you type, but works after you input values into the cell. So I'll show you how to do both ways here. Before we start, check the video description and click the link to TeachExcel so you can download the files for the tutorial and follow along. And make sure to subscribe and accept notifications so you can see all the new tutorials. Now for this functionality to work, we will be using a macro or VBA, but don't worry, it's super simple and I will cover everything. So here we have two really cool things. They basically do the same thing in the back end, just a different way to work it. So here is a regular cell, and it will only filter our data after we have hit enter. So it's not actually filtering as you type. However, the benefit of this one is it uses a simple, basic, regular, normal cell. So it's much harder to mess up in the future. It's much easier for people in the future to understand. This one over here uses an ActiveX object. Basically, it just means it uses a little tiny thing that we put over the cell in Excel. So this right here is not actually a cell. I just made it look like that. It is an input box. So the benefit is that when I type, it works automatically. I don't have to hit enter. The negative thing is it's harder to maintain if you've never seen it before. If you don't know how to work with it, it can confuse you, or it's very easy to break if you don't know what's going on. So this one here, all we have in the worksheet is just cells. Here's your data, nothing special down here at all. I don't even use a data table. However, as I will explain when we look at the macro, you could name this range, or you could turn it into a table, give it a name, and then use that name to reference it. So there are benefits if you do it that way. But here we're going to access it as a plain and simple range. This is a regular cell, nothing special. So to make this work, we need to go to the VBA window, hit Alt F11, and make sure to download this workbook so you don't have to waste your time typing all this out. Go to Sheet 1, Update on Input. And we've got a couple different things working here that I will explain at the end of the tutorial, but when you just download this, you only need to change two things. I've made a nice, neat little compact macro for you. Change the filter input, A2. This is where you will be typing. So if I type 1 or 2 or 3, it's in cell A2. And then the range of data that you're going to filter. So A4 to A16. So if I go back, Alt F11, A4 to A16. Now notice that I did include the header, and I did not include the other data over here. Now, when you are filtering data, you could include both columns here, but when I go more in depth in the macro, I will explain why I did not do that for this one. So for here, we're only going to use the field that we're going to be filtering on in this option right here, A4 to A16. And there's nothing else that you need to change. And this is the entire macro. That's it. But when you copy paste this macro into your own workbook, if you do that, don't just copy paste this. Make sure that you copy paste the entire thing. This is not a regular macro. This works on the worksheet change event, which I'll explain at the end of the tutorial or towards the end. And also make sure that you input this into the sheet upon which you would like it to work. So I double click sheet 1. This will only work on sheet 1. But that's all that you have to do. It is that simple. And now you've got something that will automatically filter when you input data and hit enter. Here I'm hitting Control Enter, so the active cell will not change. Same thing as enter though. And I delete it. Now let's look at the more complicated example, but it may be what you want. So this one over here, I told you this is not a regular cell right here. It is a special little dude that sits over the worksheet. So the first thing that we have to do in order to work with this is to get the developer tab. So we go to the file menu, and depending on your version of Excel, this will look a little bit different here, but it's pretty much the same. So then we go to the left over here, and it may be off the screen. They don't show you very easily that you can scroll down. So just scroll down, go to Options, and it's different in 2007 and some of the other versions, I believe. But here we go to Customize Ribbon, and make sure that Main Tabs or All Tabs is selected right here. And put a little check mark next to Developer. Then hit OK. And here we are. So what we want to do is we want to go to Insert right here. And we want to go down to this little dude, ActiveX Controls, and it is a text box. So insert a text box control, click that. Then we have a little crosshair guy here, so go wherever you want to input it. What I like to do is to make it the same size as another cell, so it will work with our cell layout in Excel. So go like this, and you kind of draw it here. And now I've got this. And when I click it, you can see the little dots. The dots allow me to resize it. If I click in the middle, I can move it around. I can make it longer, bigger, whatever I want. And this is where the actual input will go. Now notice when I click this, you'll see dots. Dots meaning that I can change the size and move it. It didn't actually put the cursor in here. This is one very important thing that will drive you crazy. You need to know that once you insert it, it will automatically be in design mode. Look up to the Developer tab, Design Mode. To actually select in it, you have to click Design Mode again, so it's not highlighted now. And now we get the little cursor change, and we can click inside here. Easy peasy. So make sure you have design mode turned off. If you want to work with it again though, move it around, change the size, go to the Developer tab, design mode turned back on, and now when we click it, we can do that again. And now that you understand that, there are a few more things that we have to do to make this work. So let's get it where we want. Let's say right here in D2. Now we right click the little dude, and we go to Properties. You could also do this in the VBA window, but this is a little easier. Go to Properties, and this big list will appear. Let me try to fit it on screen. This is the Properties window from the VBA window. Now, the first thing, really the only thing that we have to do here is we have to link this to a cell. When you link it to a cell, whatever you input here into this text box is going to be input into that cell. And that's how we actually get the data into the macro. So we go down here to, where are you? A linked cell. Click that. Let's say we want to link it to C2. In my original example over here, I linked it to cell A2. So we will link this one to cell C2. Type that in. Now, let's move this guy over here. Let's go over here, turn off design mode, go in here, type hello. So notice that everything I do here is mirrored in cell C2. 1, 2, 3. Hi there. So it's pretty cool. Now that the cells are linked, we could jump right into the macro, but I have to tell you that I hate the default way this is formatted. I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. Look at the padding in the front, and it is depressed right now. It goes into the worksheet. It's just really stupid. So let's go here, go back to design mode, click it. If the properties window has been closed, just right click, go to properties. All right, so let's go here. There are 3 options that we want to change. Actually, let me input some text first so you can see how it changes. Okay. Now, design mode. As you can see, it is a bit of a pain to work with this little guy. All right, so the first thing that I like to change is the selection margin. Where are you? Selection margin. Watch hello when I change it from true to false. Oh, so beautiful. It's now at the start of the cell. The next thing is to change the special effect. So we go, where are you? Special effect. Effect sunken, the default option, which looks horrible. You've got flat, raised, sunken, etched, and bump. I prefer flat. So now when we select away from the cell over here, you can see that it looks almost like a regular cell in Excel. But there's one more thing I like to do because you see there are no borders right now. We can go to border style up here and change it from border style none to border style single, and then we get a border. Now you can continue if you want. You could change the border color right here. You've got lots of different options. Maybe you want to make it like that. Looks a little better actually. So you can play around with the formatting all you want. The point is that this thing sits over the cells. And once you've gotten the formatting the way that you would like to get it, what you do, grab the guy and put him over top of the linked cell. Just like that. Now I'm going to close the properties window, and now we have got something that looks almost exactly like a cell, so it doesn't mess up our worksheet flow, but it's not a real cell. It is, let's turn off design mode, it is in fact a place where we can allow data to be filtered as we type. So go over here, beautiful. Now that you've gotten that working how you want it to work, let's go ahead and attach the macro code that will actually make it work. Now there are a couple different ways to get where we are going right now. A very easy, simple way is to right-click this guy. Okay, go to Design Mode, and then right-click this guy and go to View Code. And the moment that you do that, so if this is the first time that you did that, this screen will be blank, and you will see just something like this. Private sub text box 2 change. So text box 2 is the name of that text box. The first time you do it, it will be text box 1. And the underscore change means that this is an event. This code will run every time this text box is changed. So every time we type something into it. So that's how we get the filter as you type. Now you can also get to the options or the properties window that we were just viewing in the worksheet. If you go up here, it's not there by default, go to properties window or hit F4. And when we click down here, we can see all the properties that we just changed, including our linked cell of C2. And in the properties window down here, if I click the drop down arrow, I will see our worksheet, sheet 2, and the 2 text boxes within that worksheet. So if I want to go to the first text box that I made, I can go here. I can see the linked cell, it's A2, and all the other properties that were changed to it. So I can navigate between the text boxes here, although it could get a little bit confusing if you have a lot of them and if you don't change their name. You can change the name right here in the name properties little cell though, if you want to. And also if you click another sheet, so if I go up here and I click another sheet, notice that the drop down arrow does not have our text boxes. So it's only going to work for the sheet that has them in it. So our stuff is in sheet 2, so I click sheet 2, and then I can see the text boxes. All right, so now that you're good with that, you know where everything is, all you have to do is copy paste this code, put it right down here. So maybe I'll just do that for you right now. Copy paste, put it down here. And all we have to do is change range A2 to the linked cell, which in this case is C2, and change your range down here to the data that's going to be filtered. It's the same as the other macro. So let's hit Alt F11, go back here, and now this guy should also have, or should also cause all this data to be filtered. So turn off design mode, go down here, delete it. It's trying to filter, gets nothing. Perfect. And that's all you have to do. So as you can see, it's a lot more involved just to create the stupid thing to get the input. It would be nice if the cell in Excel had a kind of filter as you type, or where you could run the macro as you type instead of just hit enter, but this is a way to get around it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and remove this dude so we don't have any confusion, or you don't have any confusion when you download the workbook. So I went into design mode, clicked it, hit delete. And now let's go to the VBA window, Alt F11, go here to Sheet 2, and let's delete the text box to change code. So in the workbook you download, you will still have this, and it's exactly the same as the other one, just with the cell references for the original text box that I had in there. So that's all that you need in order to build either one of these worksheets. And let's turn design mode off. Yes, it's very annoying. So now we have two awesome filter as you type examples. Choose whichever one works better for your scenario. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly go through the macro to explain basically how it works. So let's hit Alt F11 to go back there. Now the first thing I want to mention is that instead of ranges right here, you could use names. So I mentioned at the very beginning of the tutorial that the range you're going to filter on, you could have that as a table. And tables have names, so you could put the name in here, or just the name of the named range. It's very simple range reference stuff in VBA. So if we go back to the window over here, you select a cell. It's A2 right now. I give it a name, my name. I can now just type my name in instead of A2. And the same works for this dude. All right, I'm going to go ahead and delete that because I am not a big fan of random named ranges that I'm not using. Okay, so I'm not using them here. All right, so that's the first thing. Now the next thing, you may actually notice that I decided to declare the variables. It just makes life a little bit easier when writing the macro, and this is a small macro, but I felt like it'd be nice to put in there. So we have two variables, the filter input and the filter range. Down here, we set the filter input equal to the cell that you will be typing into. So since it's set to an object and not text or numbers, we have to use the word set. I know that confuses some people, but just think we're setting it equal to a range. We're not setting it equal to the value inside the range or anything like that. So that's why we use set, then filter input equals, and the range we'd like it to be equal to. Same thing for down here, filter range equals this range. And that way, lower in the code, we can simply use filter input and filter range to reference these dudes. So you only have to change the code in two places at the top of the macro when you download it. So it's a nice way to make things a little easier for you. However, if you make a quick and dirty macro, you might not have these 4 lines of code. Now let's go down here. So this stuff right here is required in this macro and not the other one because here we are dealing with the worksheet change event. And to get to all these events, you have to open up a worksheet. You may notice that there are no modules over here. This time we did not go to insert module. You do not do that. You go only to the sheets. You double click the sheet, go to the drop down menu. Usually it's on general by default. Click worksheet. Then you go over here and you have all the different events. An event triggers the macro to run. So before you delete something, before you double click something, right click, calculate, change, deactivate, blah, 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 blah. So you choose one of those. We've chosen the worksheet change. So this will run every time the worksheet is changed. So what we need to do is to make sure that we don't run it if a cell is changed that we don't want to cause the filter to occur. So that's where we use this annoying little guy. And if I try to explain it, I think it's going to end up more confusing because it says if not intersect the target cell with the filter input is nothing, then all you need to know, this dude right here just says if the user changed the cell we want them to change, then do something. That's what that says. Now filter input is our cell that could be changed by the user, and target is what we get by default from the worksheet change event. So by val target as range. So this tells us automatically which cell has been changed. This is the cell that has been changed. This is the cell that we want to cause a change in the worksheet to happen. So another change, a filter. Down here, this is where we perform the filter. Filtering in VBA is so easy. So the first thing is we reference our filter range that we set up here. We type auto filter and then you hit space. The moment that you hit space, you're going to see all the arguments that you can use. Oftentimes online you'll see people using all the arguments. You don't really need to. There's only a couple that are important here. We can use field equals 1. In this case that's not important because our entire filter range, or it's not as important because our entire filter range is the range upon which we'd like to filter. So it's one column. We can leave that guy at 1, no problems. The criteria is the very interesting thing here. So the criteria is, what do we want to filter on? Well, we want to filter on the input. You could just leave it as that. But what I've done here is I've put within quotation marks an asterisk, then an ampersand, and the same thing after the input, an ampersand and an asterisk. And that says to look for our value, our input, anywhere in the cell, not just the beginning, not just the end. It doesn't have to completely match the cell. It should be found anywhere. That's why it will filter when I type 1 or 2 or 3. If this was not here, let us go ahead and test that. Goodbye. Goodbye. Go back here. Let me type 1, enter. Nothing, because there is no cell with just 1, 2, nope, 3, nope. ASC-1, there we go. So if you wanted to completely match the input, then you can leave it like this. If you want it to match at the beginning of the cell, you can put it like this with your asterisk at the end of it. If you want it to only match what's at the end of the cell, or to also match what's at the end of the cell, you can put your asterisk at the front. And if you want it to match anywhere in the cell, you put your asterisk at the front and at the back. And the ampersand is simply what joins text. This is text because it's between double quotation marks. The ampersand joins that text with your variable here, the filter input variable. And we don't need to put value here, dot value or anything like that, because by default it's just going to pull in the value from the range. Now the next thing that I did that's kind of cool, so you may notice a comma here and then a space and an underscore. The underscore allows me to put the rest of this dude on another line. So we can go down here, a little bit easier to see, is visible drop down equals false. And we have to do colon equals, that's how you have to do that here. So colon equals false. That means that the little arrows for the filter are not going to appear if I set this at true. And we go ahead and we filter. I get the stupid little arrow. I do not like it at all. So let's go back here, kill it. I feel like it just makes life a little bit cleaner to not have that guy there. And one little thing to note that might cause you an issue if you also don't want the drop-down arrow to be visible is if in your filter range you include more than one column and you put visible drop-down at false, it will only remove the visible drop-down from the columns that a filter is being applied to, which means your other columns will still have stupid drop-downs and it will look even more confusing. So that's the reason I only put filter range up here like this, with only the column that I want to filter on. Now, there is so much more I could talk to you about autofilter, but this tutorial is going too long. Autofilter is awesome. If you want to find out more about it, type MSDN space autofilter Excel into any search engine and you will get the Microsoft documentation for it. It is awesome. I love autofilter. Or, of course, you can get it from our website. We have lots of tutorials on that and lots of help. So autofilter is awesome. Now let's quickly take a look at the other macro because it is almost exactly the same. So all we have to do is double click sheet 2. And when we double click sheet 2, we can see the macro is pretty much almost exactly the same. So here's the other one. The only thing is there we do not have to check if the correct cell is being changed, because whereas here, this will run every time the entire worksheet is changed, this code over here on sheet 2 will only run when this text box is changed. So here, the text box has been changed. I have typed something into it. I'm running the code, blah, blah, but I get the value from the linked cell. Filter range stays the same. Everything else for autofilter stays the same. Now, when I'm in the regular VBA window like this, you may notice that we cannot, with the drop-down arrow, select the text boxes. But just know you can access all the code that's created in the entire process here just by double-clicking sheet 1 and double-clicking sheet 2. So that's all there is for this tutorial, and I hope you found it helpful. Don't forget to turn off design mode when you want to use the worksheet. And now you know how to filter data as you type in Excel. I hope you liked the tutorial. If it was helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe and accept notifications so you can see all the new tutorials.